G'day, folks. Today's YouTube video is titled Ransom Chats Exposed. It's been a while since I posted. It's worth noting I return better, stronger, and faster with some new and improved uh, content formatting and structural and graphical improvements. Uploads going forward will be not only in SD but also in HD, and I hope that is pleasing to the ear. Yeah, so today's talk is titled Ransom Chats Exposed. Um, yeah, let's just hop right over to the agenda. So it will revolve fully around the websites known as Ransomware.live. Surprisingly, I find out earlier this week that even CISOs, I guess among other folks, don't even know that this website exists, which is truly fascinating to me as I pretty much visit this website almost once a day at least. So yeah, we'll start with an introduction to the website known as Ransomware.live. Give some teasers and tidbits there, which should urge you to investigate and explore the websites much more further and deeper than what's covered in today's session. Then we'll pivot into a specific tab or feature within Ransomware.live known as negotiation chats. And within the negotiation chats, we're actually able to identify previous victims who have unfortunately been breached by ransomware threat actors. And throughout their entire chat chain, right at the end, once they make the payment of the ransom so that they can get their data and gain pretty much access and availability back to the organization, it is at that point where we actually are able to glimpse into threat actor remediation advisories provided by threat actors themselves to their victims. It's a game changer. And then also we have company closure examples, just to again really highlights the very deadly serious um, nature of the topic at hand. And then to finish off, we will go down the road of, so what's the big deal, with everything shared in today's um, recording? Well, what's the big deal? And I think there's some key take-home points which we can derive from that. So we'll start off with a demo straight to the website. So this is Ransomware.live, HTTPS www.ransomware.live. And this, in my opinion, is really an excellent website. It's a game changer. And I'll start off, with that point and kind of progress further from there. Why this website is a game changer is because it is tapping into information regarding threat actors and threat actor activity and victims being breached by threat actors. It is bringing out and extracting and displaying this information out from the unindexed side of the internet. Now, core concepts really right off the bat. You have the indexed side of the internet, which is literally the general internet that can be browsed through Google and any public indexed website. Then you have the unindexed side of the internet, categorized as the dark and deep web. Websites hosted in the unindexed side of the internet often have, well, actually, all of them are of a .onion domain. And what Ransomware.live actually allows us to do is from an public facing websites, we are able to, well, they are doing the heavy lifting of tracking any new information posted by all of these various ransomware threat actor groups. And we, from this website, are able just to simply tap into that information. Um, Again, as we are at demo level here, let me show you what I'm referring to. So here I click on a ransomware threat actor known as Kairos. Specifically, when you go to, again, a wealth of valuable information that is not going to be there for every single threat actor. Some more well-known regular threat actors will have obviously a wealth of more information available. But for me personally, Kairos is actually a relatively unheard of threat actor. But when you go and click here under known locations, here you actually see what I was talking about. The FQDN, basically the fully qualified domain name of their publicly available websites where they would post the victims that they have successfully breached or claimed to have breached. Sometimes, we're working with cyber criminals here. They may not very well be truthful at times, but here you can see the perfect example of what I was referring to. It is an onion-based website. Now, how would you access the unindexed side of the internet? Well, there's only one way to do that, and that is via a browser known as Tor, leveraging a Tor enabled web browser would unlock the ability to navigate into the dark and deep web spaces. Word of warning there, extensive research and preparation is required before you head into that deeper, I class it into the category of cyber threat intelligence escapades. Let's head back to the core sites. So for me, you know, cybersecurity is obviously a highly technical space, but the importance of really bringing the human, the heart element into what you do is very, very important. And for me, that touches on, if folks are aware of the incident response lifecycle. We're not going to unpack every layer or phase of the incident response lifecycle, but what we are going to do is we're going to touch on the first phase of the incident response lifecycle, which is the preparation phase. Simply said, the incident response lifecycle speaks to, from start to finish, the handling of an incident which has occurred against your organization. And phase one, being preparation, focuses on what you do before that cyber D-Day unfortunately hits. It's not a question of if, it is simply a question of when. And a website, again, like Ransomware.live, brings home just how serious and how active the threat is out there, whether you actually knew it or not at this end-to-end level. So yes, the preparation phase. It is the phase, basically, the way I think about it visually. You're busy sharpening your tools. You've got an axe, you've got a knife, you're busy using the grinder and you're sharpening your tools. You look at that from a cybersecurity standpoint. You are learning, you are better um, getting to know the tools, all of your cyber tools at your disposal, um, information about the threat actors, their tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, really getting to understand what type of kill chains you could be dealing with. So for me, navigating or browsing to this website almost daily, almost as like the first thing as I start my day, it's more of a psychological effect for me, it places you, I believe, in a heightened state of cyber readiness. Why? Because you hop on here and you just see how many organizations out there have unfortunately been breached and potentially hit by ransomware across a wide range of threat actors. And you know, you go into your day, whether you're protecting one organization you work for, or you're more like an MSSP where you actually protect several organizations. Um, yeah, this is no better way to really get in that heightened cyber awareness state ready for cyber battle, essentially. And what you see here on this page, as it says here, this is only the most 100 recent victim disclosures on the main page. But as you see here, 324 groups, those are the ransomware, identified ransomware threat actors. There's obviously more victims, how many victims this year, and how many victims this month. Those are some crazy figures, you know, knowing that we are in March of 2026, very early on in the year, and already at 438 victims. As you see the representation, again, some um, posts will have more information than less. Here we have the name of the organization, the country of origin, the threat actor which with high probability has breached them, the date of discovery of the breach, an AI generated description of the organization, sometimes in their local language, in this case, French description. And all these categories here, in this case, grayed out, but you can see in this case actually highlighted that taps into other additional information, such as screenshots that you could even gather that have been shared. And if we navigate down, the industry type associated with the organization is often also categorized here in the bottom right. And again, once you click into this event itself, there is again a wealth of additional information for you to explore. Another point which really places me at a heightened state of cyber awareness is you start your day going to the website and you notice, like if I scroll down here, just have a look on my screen as I place it right about there. Threat actor known as the gentleman, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all on the 16th of March, publicly disclosing that several organizations have been hit by this ransomware threat actor. If that doesn't, you know, once you do this regularly, you start to see well-known ransomware threat actor groups always popping up in batches of victims at a time. They're competing with one another, almost like for the scoreboard, you know. And what goes hand in hand with that is, well, that is a trigger for learning and understanding. So if ransomware threat actor known as the gentleman is hitting organizations fairly frequently, wouldn't it be worth your while to further, in a targeted fashion, research the gentleman, how they function, their TTPs, the kill chain, what they use, what do they commonly exploit to gain entry into an organization? Is it an email-based threat? Is it a USB worm? Is it a internet-facing asset which has been exploited by a vulnerability, etc., etc.? And you start to build those knowledge bases of these various threat actors. And what starts to happen is there are overlapping TTPs, tools, there are overlapping root causes for compromise, email. You will, as you will see even later on in our same content for today, email As always, email targeting the human is one of the greatest attack vectors and the most common attack vector used by threat actors in this day and age. Again, because it bypasses several layers of defense to go straight through targeting the human. And yeah, just to again surface level, I tease folks going only at the surface level in some of these areas because I welcome you to go to the website yourself and explore it to your heart's content. Um, Here we have the victims, all of the victims. Here we have the ransomware threat actor groups, press. So ransom victims who have been breached, which has actually reached the public eye, public reporting. Here you can do a generic search, some more statistics. World map is a good one. As someone who's originally from South Africa, I always keep a very, very close watchful eye on the victims from South Africa. And it's as easy as just pivoting, just like this. The latest breach from an organization posted on Ransomware.live from South Africa, Diesel Electric, on the 1st of March 2026. So yeah, many different ways. Ransomware Notes is also a really good one. I would advise you do not download these files on your work machine. These can trigger several security incidents based on very static and generic use case detection sources. Basically, here you can actually download what the ransom notes would look like against a machine which has a machine or organization which has been breached by the specific threat actor. So you get to identify the formatting of that threat actor, how they word it, how the wording, the images, and the contents used. And there's many other useful pages for way more information gathering. Hop back here. So the negotiation chats, as you saw earlier, it is one of the little tabs which navigates you to a whole nother page on the Ransomware.live website. So the crux of this session today is really to see what we can extract and benefit from unfortunate victims communicating with ransomware threat actors, and those threat actors are actually providing tangible, actionable remediation recommendations that those victims can slash should have followed to potentially not have been hit by the ransomware threat actor. So part of that exercise had me really diving extensively into the negotiation chats. There are hundreds, and through some refinements, well, I had to look through quite a few. I'd say probably over 50. And from that, it is actually an emotional roller coaster that you are able to tap into as you read this bidirectional communication between an unfortunate victim and the ransomware threat actor group. So what I've done here is I've thought about keywords which kind of unlock short little stories associated with what I've seen throughout my negotiation chats, exploration activities. And that's what we're going to go through now. So when an organization gets hit by ransomware, disruption, disruption is key point number one. Um, Ransomware is the act of a piece of malware that is specifically encrypting the files, all different types, and it all revolves around the encryption of data hosted on a victim's workstations, servers, you name the operating system, Windows, Mac, Linux distributions, you name it, virtual machines, hypervisors, database servers, etc. The encryption of such infrastructure causes immediate disruption to that victim organization. What happens thereafter is really quite quickly a representative from that organization is reading the ransomware notes, the ransom notes, and it is giving a link to an Onion website or to some other communications medium that that ransomware threat actor uses. It is done in a sense of urgency, without a doubt. As the communications continue, there is confusion, there is concern, there is uncertainty because you're communicating with cyber criminals. You can't really trust them, but you do have to somewhat place your trust in them during the duration of this bidirectional communication. One thing stands out very, very clear is that the communication with these ransomware threat actor groups, it's very professional. It is very impressive from a customer experience perspective. Very fast responses, really catering to the victim, again, because they want the victim at the end of the day to pay the ransom and make money. And it is a very mature service that looks like it truly has been refined through the ages, continuous improvements bolted on throughout this entire engagement. Very procedural. I mean, sometimes you look at the first um, response when a victim reaches out to the ransomware threat actor group through this medium. They are like, "Good day, thank you for contacting us. What can we do for you?" It's it's crazy. It's crazy. And then things get like quite a bit more serious, um, because then the type of ransom amounts is mentioned to the victim if it's not already posted in the ransom chat. Sorry, ransom notes. It actually normally is at that point. So the negotiator um, now starts to communicate, and there's bidirectional communication. Um, Often the amounts that the threat actors are requesting, the organization cannot meet, or right from the beginning does not accept that amount. So they try and negotiate. There's a negotiation going on, price negotiations. Um, Threat actors seem to very accurately calculate the ransom amount based on the overall value, public valuation of the organization. So, like if an organization is worth 50 million USD, uh, threat actors would say, "Oh, okay, please pay us 5 million USD," as an example. Big boy money involved. So the C-suite, meaning the top level management of the organization, are in war room discussions and chats. Um, and whether it is the week or the weekend, C-suites are flying from wherever they are in the world to meet up at the HQ of their organization to have active discussions about the unfortunate disruption of daily business operations. Seen some cases where the negotiator requests the the ransomware group to please give them some time as the C-suite is flying in from somewhere so that they can discuss the topic at hand. I've seen requests for extensions, for time extensions, so that they can get the necessary money that the threat actors are requesting from the bank on the topic of bank loans. Um, what else? The business impact is immediate, which then goes in hand with potential job loss or layoffs. Legal jargon is often involved in the chats from what I've seen, as a degree of, I guess, also time extension as they need to contact legal, etc., etc. And I think covered most of the points quite nicely. The last two actually speak to very early on in the conversation, where the victim requests evidence from the threat actor in the form of like a CSV document or a Word document listing all of the contents, all the files, the names of the files, all the documents which have been encrypted by the ransomware. In some cases, they specifically request um, to show proof that they have the following, again, confidential, internal, critical, production critical for the victim documents, that those have been encrypted by the threat actor. And when the threat actor can provide proof of that, then I think that also, from what I've seen, speeds up, payments or negotiation. Moving over to 3 company closure examples, just again to bring home the very seriousness of the topic at hand. This is actually by far, I didn't even need to do any research on this one. I knew about this one as it fell into the logistics and automotive industry type space. K&P Logistics Group, um, which was a 158-year-old group of companies, collapsed into an administration in 2023 after a ransomware attack by the Kira ransomware gang. That's actually quite a well-known ransomware gang. Sometimes all it takes, you must believe, and again, by the end of the rest of the slides, it'll be very clear to you that these are not highly sophisticated methods or approaches used by threat actors to compromise these organizations. Sometimes it literally just takes a single weak employee password. Sometimes that's all it takes, resulting to the loss of 700 jobs. Um, and yeah, failure of the 500 lorry fleet operation. Very unfortunate. And you can see it's a 158-year-old organization. Cybersecurity was not priority number one. It shouldn't need to be, but unfortunately, in this day and age, it is. And if you're not caring about cybersecurity and investing in it, your main source of income for your organization may unfortunately um, arrive to an abrupt halt. Next example, MediSecure. A former Australian electronic prescription provider suffered a major ransomware attack in April 2024. Medical, so you're talking potentially identifiable information or PII, highly confidential information being leaked and breached. Healthcare data of approximately 12.9 million individuals. It's very unfortunate. Threat actor known as Ransom Hub compromised them back in the 14th of December 2024. If you look at, again, we humans, right? So you factor in that date. That's nearing the end of the year as everyone starts to ramp down, looking forward to the holidays. Cybersecurity staff maybe not as plentiful as normal, maybe not as on the ball, thinking in holiday mode, rolling at a much slower volumetric pace, and that's when threat actors strike. Nothing new, nothing new at all. Third example, the German Einhaus Group, provider of a mobile phone insurance, repair, and logistics services, fell victim to a devastating ransomware attack in 2023. Ultimately led to the company's insolvency. Yeah, it's really sad. In this case, Royal Ransomware threat actor group compromised them on the 12th of April 2023. You see, in some cases, more information is provided than others. So it was discovered by Ransomware.live on the 12th of the 4th, but the attack, the estimated attack dates took place on the 30th of March 2023. Now we hop into the remediation recommendations. So what I've done here is, again, it's a lot of content to work with. What I've done here is I've created four threat actor remediation recommendation slides where we are able to, well, I've extracted, again, looking through all of the various negotiation chats. I've extracted, I'd call some of the juiciest remediation, most, when I say juiciest, I mean juiciest and most detailed remediation recommendations provided by ransomware threat actor XYZ. So let us hop right in. Here we are looking at the negotiation chats between a victim. We don't really care about the victim. The victim actually isn't disclosed in the negotiation chats, to be honest. But using some reverse engineering of the timestamp, publicly available information of breaches and orgs that have been breached, you can somewhat actually identify, even in wording within the bidirectional chats can sometimes give away the organization type and context behind the organization to identify who it may have been. So yeah, again, there's a lot to unpack. I'm gonna, like blast through it because again, there's a few slides and I want to touch on awareness and I want to touch on variety as the core themes here. I mean, again, there's a lot of take home further research and investigation from the listener, which is always, more than welcome in the lifelong learning field known as cybersecurity. Okay, so what they're saying to a victim is your network has been compromised by mailing of messages to the emails with malicious attachments. In fancy wording, well, that's an email-based threat. Okay. Some recommendations relate to using a sandbox to analyze the contents of letters, meaning emails, and their attachments. Um, yeah, I mean, depending on the email security vendor of an organization, often by default, those email features straight from the email security vendor often has every single email going through a sandbox detonation environment. Because if it didn't, there would be a lot more malicious emails reaching users' inboxes. So that's again, like that's a no-brainer. Using a sandbox to analyze the contents of emails and their attachments. Threat actors are smarter nowadays. There are many methods used by threat actors to bypass sandbox detonation, where the malicious email is indeed malicious. It gets detonated in the sandbox, but at that exact moment in time, the vendor's sandbox detonation does not identify the email as malicious, and therefore it actually reaches the user's mailbox. Yeah, that's the unfortunate truth and reality. Next point, use the password security policies. This is just simply referring to, password complexity, password change policies. This is obviously defined by an organization's policies, and the end user pretty much adheres to this. You know, password reuse should not at all ever be done. A password should be should be more than X characters, special characters, numbers, letters, passphrases, if possible. The password should be changed once a month, once every 3 months, depending on your organization's security policies. Next point, make protection from attacks like pass the hash and pass the ticket attacks. There is a lot of um, quality research to be done within those two types of attacks. So I will summarize. Pass the hash attacks steal and reuse NCLM password hashes. This speaks to when a threat actor has successfully gained entry on an asset within the victim organization. So the user has clicked on the link, they have clicked on the URL, they have double clicked on the malicious documents. And within that moment, the malware was successfully able to execute. And if they are simply able to extract from the LSAS cache, then they would have access to the local host machine's NTLM stored password hashes. And then using the hash of the user or the account's password, then they could simply what's the word? They could relay, no, re-inject. The word escapes me. It's a nice word, but I forget it now. Yeah, they could relay or reuse that hash and basically gain access into the organization using that account. Past the tickets, attacks steal and reuse Kerberos tickets. Kerberos is actually point number 6, also speaking to a Kerber roasting related attack. Kerber roasting and Kerberos. Kerberos is a Active Directory authentication method that end users use to authenticate with the Active Directory infrastructure. So in this method, it requires capturing hash credentials from compromised systems. That specifically pass the hash, but in the case of pass the tickets, that uses valid session tickets instead. So the stealing of the tickets, basically the bi-directional authentication taking place between the user and the Kerberos or Active Directory server. Point number 4, updates all OS and software to latest versions, especially Microsoft Defender antivirus. Simply, the threat actor is simply saying, patch your SH1T. Make sure all of your assets are running the latest versions of operating system and software, especially In this case, it says Microsoft Defender Antivirus. That's an AV, but I'm sure they would also mean Microsoft Defender for Endpoints, which is the EDR, making sure that that is running green ticks across all of the components, the virus definition, the threat intelligence database, uh, the blocking mode, everything is green, everything is up to date. Again, no brainer. Implement the hardware firewalls with filtering policies, modern DLP and IDS theme systems. There's quite a lot there. Basically, deploy hardware firewalls, obviously at the perimeter, with very hardened filtering policies to block certain malicious threat intelligence and traffic of various types, modern data loss prevention and mm, identity, I know exact ID, yeah, intrusion detection system. It escaped me for a second there, and SIEM systems. These are all, again, very generic recommendations, but it's just the point of saying have these layers of defense in place. Not saying that's going to stop the attack which compromised this victim, but it'll make a difference. Block curb arresting attacks, again, focused on Active Directory security. I must say the category of knowledge in the space of Active Directory security is very, very important and very, very serious, especially when ransomware ransomware threat actors often follow this kill chain. Gain entry by compromising a user, one or many, from that user's accounts, elevate your permissions or privileges to admin or local admin. From there, laterally move to identify the organization's crown jewel infrastructure, such as Active Directory servers and other important infrastructure, DNS servers, etc. Once those servers are found, pivots to those servers, and then using obviously a compromised domain admin credentials from there, deploy ransomware at that level. That would then propagate pretty much throughout most of the organization and cause severe damage. That's why they follow that kill chain. Conduct full penetration tests and audits. Yeah, okay. Again, generic. Use and updates antivirus, anti-malware, and malicious traffic detection software. Again, very generic, but it's basically just saying have all of your antivirus and anti-malware and malicious traffic detection software running the latest to date virus definition versions. It's again, it's not a given that that's going to stop what has happened here from happening, but it's going to greatly negate or lessen many of the attacks. Configure group policies, disable the default administrator accounts, create new accounts. Configure group policies, so there's a lot of hardening one can do at an organization-wide level using GPO or group policy objects. GPO is old school though. Um, Most of these policies nowadays are like deployed via an MDM capability, such as Microsoft Intune. Disable the default administrators accounts. That is again bare basic best practices on the ground. You don't want a default administrator account just lying dormant enabled on a user's machine. So when the user gets compromised, they simply pivot to through the previous methods mentioned. They would simply extract the password for that administrator account, and you've made life very easy for threat actors at that point. Backups. You must have offline backups, does not have access to the network. And that's referring to when ransomware strikes and encrypts everything. You have to have an offline backup of your critical data and information hosted offsite, disconnected, not in any way connected to the production landscape and environment. Because if it is, there's a chance that through this ransomware encryption spread, it can spread to your backups. And that unfortunately will be no good for you whatsoever. And that actually goes hand in hand with some of the previous company closure examples where, yeah, organizations normally cannot recover from serious ransomware infections if they are simply unable to recover and recover from backup. So that's Blackbuster. Revil ransomware group speaks to now this is like remediation recommendations, but like also working backwards because here they map out exactly how they successfully infected this organization. So a spam campaign with a virus file was sent to employees of your domain, email-based threats, right? Once user clicked the file, our virus payload was installed on the computer. Specialized tools, the computer was scanned, and all user authorization data. Authorization data was used to access the network remotely. Next, we scanned your network and found a vulnerable server with a remote code execution vulnerability. That's an unpatched server, is essentially what they found. Now, from that RCE, then they execute their payload and gather full access to the server. Yeah. Next, we special security tools to dump all possible passwords from the server. That's when they dump LSAS, pretty much. They're using a Netcat or Metasploit. Those are the commonly known tools used in these cases. Now they could use also Bloodhound. Yeah. We use those passwords to gather access to other network elements until we access your domain controller. Domain controller DC, game over at that point. Specially designed keyloggers were installed to the IT staff machines, which helped us to gain access to the whole IT infra. We modified your antivirus configuration the way it would not detect our presence on the network. So yeah, not only did they get in, they basically null and voided the antivirus. So that could mean that they created extreme whitelisting, pretty much like whitelist the C drive across the global organization. I mean, that would basically render the EDR useless. As soon as we gathered access to all the IT network, we specially crafted tools to collect all valuable data. Upon data fetch completion, we launched our locking software. That's basically the encryption, the ransomware payload across some of your IT systems. We didn't put much pressure on it, just wanted you to know that your data was leaked. Interesting. That actually, wording wise, means they could have done way more damage and infected and encrypted way more machines. Moving on to Conti. This one was interesting. It speaks to kind of like old school. Um, Allow me to explain. Put a server in the domain that will download daily updates from Microsoft and once a week or twice a week distribute updates from the server. That to me screams a Windows server up. Um, it's a WSUS, WSUS. Basically, it's a centralized assets deployed in your infrastructure that centrally collects all of the Windows updates from Microsoft and then in a centralized fashion pushes those updates to all of the assets within the infrastructure. That's old school. WSUS is old school. New school is like Microsoft Intune running software update rings or any other type of software such as that. That's kind of like the future. So that's that. Also install Carbon Black or Sentinel Antivirus. I like how they were specific there. That's quite funny. Make it a rule to change all important passwords once a month. You got a malware virus somewhere on the internet. We used that tool and accessed your terminal. We received all necessary passwords from over there. The rest was easy. You got a virus, a malware virus somewhere on the internet. Now think about what that means from an organization standpoint. One of your employees browsing during working hours, after working hours on the work machine, doesn't really matter. And through their browsing habits, concepts of drive-by download, maybe some SEO poisoning, um, they maybe a watering hole attack. That is where they got caught hook, line, and sinker. And the rest is history as the victim appears in a public negotiation chat with Conti, unfortunately. You have been breached through the email phishing campaign, another email-based threat. Our recommendations would be implement better email filtering policies. Basically, you have an email security solution in place, harden it more, leverage more of its features and functionalities to better protect your organization. Implement tape-based backup hardware. Speaking again to that offline, off-site backup. Audit account access policies network-wide. Rebuild the network using segmentation procedures. That's actually a good recommendation. Again, it's not a foolproof, but it restricts the blast radius of the infection. So if workstation X in office Y got hit by ransomware, all assets in that office got infected. And that is like the segmentation logically at a network level done there. It didn't spread further. That's like an example of network segmentation. Implement better password policies. We've been through that. Block the pass, the hash, and Cobra roast or Cobra roasting attacks. Notify all your employees and security policies inside the company, opening email attachments, changing passwords, etc. That speaks to end user awareness training, equipping your staff, with being more inclined or able to detect suspicious emails through their daily email activity. And the last one, buy better AV EDR software. That's a funny one. Remediation recommendations from Akira. Initial access to your network was purchased on the dark web. Then Kerber roasting was carried out and we got password hashes. Then we just brute these and got domain admin passwords. Spending weeks inside of your network, we managed to detect some fails we highly recommend to eliminate. So what I want to say here is that little statement is the reality of how most orgs get hit nowadays. A ransomware threat actor group just goes to the dark web, purchases all it takes is one, purchases one of your organization's compromised credentials for, let's say, 100 USD. It's like pay money to make money. Literally pay like 1% and make back 100% essentially. So credentials could cost $50 to purchase, and then they go and ask at the end of compromising an organization 5 million, like ransom, USD ransom, for example. Yeah. So with those creds, curb arresting, so stealing the TGS, and then they got the hashes. I would actually notice one point about curb arresting is once they have those hashes, they they can have those hashes, they can get caught, but the the ironic point is the fact that they've got those hashes means offline, not even no longer associated with your environment and network, they can throw their hardware at working towards cracking the hashes of those passwords, and they can return at a later stage or date, maybe perfect timing, Christmas time, maybe public holiday time, etc., etc. None of your employees should open suspicious emails. We've been through that one. Use strong passwords. Install MFA, multi-factor authentication, wherever possible. That should be a given in this day and age. Use the latest versions of operating systems as they are less vulnerable to attacks. Update all software versions. Use antivirus solutions and traffic monitoring tools. Create a jump host for your VPN. Yeah, that's also a good one. Use unique credentials on it that differ from domain one. This is a good one. So what this refers to is often remote workers, often externals or third parties who have access and credentials created for your organization are entering your organization remotely. Creating a jump host is a segregated, segmented, better secured. Um, well, that's what a jump host is. Essentially, it's a bastion host, and that is where you place your VPN, Citrix, whatever you name it. Um, and that method there, again, lessens the blast radius if infection were to originate from a user coming from external via this VPN. The jump host could help in that regard because it wouldn't spread to the main domain one as it mentions. Use backup software with cloud storage with supports token key. Yeah, instruct your employees as often as possible about online safety precautions, end user awareness and training. Most vulnerable points is the human factor and the responsibility of your employees and system administrators, etc. We wish you safety, calmness, and lots of benefits in the future. Thank you for working with us and your careful attitude to security. It always is the human factor, you know, the user's bad browsing habits leading to infection, the user falling for an obvious malicious email-based threat, um, users coming with their external drives infected with worm malware from the outside into the organization. It is always the user, unfortunately. So, what's the big deal kind of ramping down at the end of the unpacking? The truth is those remediation recommendations provided by the threat actors, it's nothing new. Those generic remediation recommendations have been shared, have been posted, have been repeated, have been followed in organizations for a very, very long time. I think the problem points is the generic remediation recommendation needs to be followed 100%, and anything less than 100% leaves room for that 1%, that 2% of users to be compromised, and that is how threat actors enter the organization and cause such severe damage. It's a nice wording here, defense in-depth fallacy. Basically speaks to if you look at an organization with all of their security, IT, compliance, bells and whistles, it pretty much looks like this. But as you've, seen previously now, as we've nicely unpacked, all of this in place can still have your organization or your client's organization appearing in on Ransomware Live. Unfortunately, that's the reality of it. Another point worth noting is uh, these remediation recommendations really revolve around a core concept known as the cyber hygiene basic. Pretty much the recommendations we read earlier fall into this category. These last 3 points speak to what can you do um, with this information. Well, as a cyber professional, everything that we've covered today could unlock additional learning pivot points. There is so much more information to gather, there's so much more to learn and understand about everything which has been covered along the way. As an external cyber employee, what you can do is you can really, as an external cyber employee, meaning you're like an MSSP or a service provider for one or several clients, you can continue to protect your clients while factoring in and keeping a close watchful eye within their environments, making sure that they don't have any lapses in any of the previously mentioned remediation recommendations. You could even possibly create some form of billable consultancy, performing like an audit or review against the organization to make sure that they have all of these areas in check. And as an internal employee, um, you can pretty much do the same thing at an internal level. Each one of these recommendations you could take and be like, within my organization, do we have a process or a procedure in place to ensure that our EDR, our EDRs across every single EDR onboarded asset is of a fully up-to-date and healthy state. Anything less is dangerous. There's like one example. And yeah, that's all for today's recording. Have a good one.